Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss the latest round of political polling, which was released last night with some consequence, which showed a consistent surge of support towards Labour and away from the Conservatives, with YouGov giving Labour a 33-point lead. This has not happened since the first year of the last Labour government. I'll be discussing what effectively has caused this and what it means in practical terms for the future. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. You see the poll results. When the YouGov one came out, I may just have used some unfortunate language. It was totally involuntary. I couldn't believe it. But the first thing to note, the lead won't stay like this. This isn't like, oh my God, this is after 3 weeks. Imagine what it's going to be like after 2 months. No, it won't stay like this. It's worth considering why YouGov poll in particular gives Labour a significantly larger lead than the other pollsters, even though they all give Labour a large lead. Partly it was because YouGov did their field work yesterday and Wednesday, which was more up to date than several of them. What it means is that the people that they polled probably knew that the pension funds market nearly collapsed. And so they also may have heard Liz Truss doing her interview rounds yesterday as well. Those interviews were so bad that Labour were actively publicising them. In terms of general polling, the head of polling at YouGov also explained a few factors. Labour had just had a very successful conference, so people will have been reading or hearing positive things about Labour at the time. They'll have also been seeing wall-to-wall disasters linked to the Tory government in the news as well. They also said that there were a lot of don't knows amongst former Tory voters. Now that can be quite crucial because it could be that there's a lot of people that actually will vote Tory at the next election, but they're hesitant to say so now. Even on an anonymous poll, they just can't bring themselves to tick that box with the shit show that's going on. I would also add this. When the actual election comes, there'll be a campaign. The Tories have got advisors right now, of course. They pay for political advice. Sometimes we pay for it. But during the campaign, they will be spending the big bucks. They build up a war chest and they blow it all on the best strategic advice they can get, the top guys. Those strategists will be carefully controlling what Tory MPs say to the public. Remember, at the last election, Jacob Rees-Mogg and Priti Patel were banned from speaking at all. Liz Truss was not exactly used prominently either. So the government won't be saying anything dodgy. Anything they say will have to go through careful filters. They'll have minders, right? Every member of the government will have minders around them. They will certainly not be allowed to say anything that sets fire to the economy. Because the YouGov results, if translated into a general election, that had people modelling a complete extinction event for the Tories. It was leaving them with somewhere between 53 or 61 seats, depending on whose model you looked at. Obviously, the Tories are not going to allow themselves to be put in a position where they lose almost all their MPs. But although that 33-point lead is a bit of an outlier and the result of a perfect storm of circumstances, what is clear is that Truss's Tories are deeply unpopular after only 3 weeks, and Starmer's Labour are being seen as a good alternative. So what happened? Well, should we look at what didn't happen? Robert Peston is a correspondent for ITV. Now, he is worth following because, like a lot of experienced correspondents, he gets to talk to people and he gets some useful insights and it's worth seeing them. But sometimes he's a grade A cretin. Yesterday, he was wondering why the government's spending £150 billion on businesses and people on energy subsidies and tax cuts would mean the party of government would see their popularity plunge like that. Shouldn't that make them popular? No, the government didn't spend £150 billion on businesses and people, on energy and tax cuts. They spent it on shoring up windfall profits for oil and energy companies. That's where that money's going. It's not to the people, it's to oil and energy companies. Remember that before Truss announced her plan, Labour announced theirs. Compare and contrast. The Labour plan was to freeze energy prices at their current level. The Tory plan is for them to go up by an extra £600 a year for the average bill. Labour were funding it from windfall profits from oil companies. The Tories are trying to borrow and make us pay for it to service that debt later on. Labour were planning on only compensating the energy companies. The money was just to compensate energy companies for the extra wholesale costs that they face. So their normal profits would be maintained. It would be like it was normal times. But they wouldn't be getting any extra money to protect those windfall profits. They wouldn't get any extra unexpected profits. The Tories are using the money to allow those extra windfall profits as well. Labour plan to insulate homes so that people wouldn't need to consume as much energy for heating next winter. The Tories are not. Oh, and to pay for it all, Truss has announced that there's going to be massive cuts to public spending in the next budget. What sort of idiot can't see that most people would prefer Labour's plan? So in the real world, people are not happy that Truss isn't freezing energy costs when Labour had a plan to do so. They're not happy that she's crashed the pound because it's going to mean higher prices. They're not happy that the Bank of England has already had to spend 65 billion quid in order to protect the economy against the 45 billion quid of unpopular tax cuts that no bugger asked for. A move that didn't fix the problem either. It's not just that they've spent £65 billion to help pay for the £45 billion of tax cuts. The Bank of England said it's just a move that buys time. That's all. It buys a couple of weeks for the government to do something. A move that was partially undone when Truss went into interviews yesterday to insist that she wasn't going to change one iota of her plan, of her stupid bloody move. Although I note that she and Kwarteng are now meeting with the Office of Budgetary Responsibility today about getting an economic forecast out this month, not wait until the end of November. Reality is closing around them. I am getting the strong impression that they're going to have to drop the scrapping of the upper tax band. That is going to have to go. Remember, the government can't just announce a budget and implement it. MPs have to vote it through. Parliament is sovereign here. You know, there were already a lot of Tory MPs who didn't really fancy putting their names by it and then facing their constituents afterwards. After the latest polls, it would seem a madness for any vulnerable Tory MP to approve of that tax cut. If enough of them threaten to vote with the opposition to block it, the government will have to drop the measure. A budget vote, it's not like a normal parliamentary vote. You know, if Liz Truss loses a normal parliamentary vote, that's embarrassing. That is actually embarrassing with a large majority. But if she loses a budget vote, that is considered basically the same thing as a vote of no confidence. Speaking of which, some have asked if Starmer should issue a formal vote of no confidence in Truss as Prime Minister. My instinct is to say no. The problem with confidence votes in Parliament is they have the effect of getting the beleaguered Prime Minister's MPs to back them out of party loyalty against the common enemy, in this case Labour. So it would actually give her a boost. But if Truss becomes much more unpopular, then it might well be worth doing, just to sharpen the minds of the Tories. Basically, the vote wouldn't work under the current circumstances, so only issue such a motion if it can help embarrass Tory MPs in their local constituencies. But I suspect Labour needs to wait for Truss to become much more unpopular right now. For now, I think it's best to just keep poking and watch the Tories panic, because they're in a proper death spiral now. I talked yesterday how they may well have to get rid of Truss if she doesn't play ball. But make no mistake, it won't be easy. Liz Truss is doing exactly what the far-right think tanks have been pushing for years. This is the culmination of decades of preparation. Tufton Street has its government. The economic mess we find ourselves in, it looks like a cock-up. And Truss has certainly messed up the politics of it. But the economics is exactly what her backers wanted. They wanted the pound to be devalued. They wanted interest rates to rise. They wanted the Treasury in a mess. They actually wanted the Treasury broken up. Remember, several of their MPs, like Kemi Badenoch and saying, were talking about breaking the Treasury up, bringing the Bank of England, back out of independence and splitting the Treasury into two lumps, weaken it. They want the economy to be so buggered and so unmanageable that chopping public services is made credible. They want the NHS privatised. They want more reliance on fossil fuels. Everything that Truss is doing is what they want. And the MPs installed into the party to make sure it happened will fight tooth and nail to maintain it. The ERG may not be a majority of Tory MPs, but they are very aggressive and very organised. They are the reason the majority of the Tory party couldn't handle Brexit sensibly. They are the reason the referendum happened at all. Not because of their numbers, but because their threats to tear the party apart. It's what's kept the moderates so timid, in line for so long. They want Truss in charge right up until the next election. They don't seem to care that they'll lose that election. If they think they can get what they want in the next 2 years with full steam ahead, that's what they'll do. Remember, the ERG are not actually Conservatives. They pretend to be in order to infiltrate the party to win power. Tory MPs have got a choice. If they cannot pressure Truss into changing direction, and I suspect they can't in any appreciable way, I mean, Labour can't maintain a 33-point lead. Surely that would be insane. But they are going to hold on to a large lead while Truss remains, well, Truss. Even when she tries to appeal to the public, as in yesterday's interviews, she's crap. Even when she tries, she's really bad. So even getting her to change policy will only help a little because she is still Truss. You know, they'll have to get rid of her at some point, but it's tricky. It looks chaotic to get rid of 2 leaders so soon. It's not definitely a bad thing. The DUP did it last year. They had 3 leaders in the space of a few months, and you know their Stormont election results were pretty much where they would have been with any leader. They'll worry that getting rid of Truss invites Johnson back, so maybe some would prefer to wait until the Privileges Committees deals with him and see what happens there. They face the Tufton Street mob, fighting tooth and nail, splitting the party if they try and dislodge Truss. Unless, I suppose, they think they can get another useful idiot to be PM. Remember that Penny Mordaunt was 3rd place. She was close to beating Truss to that 2nd place in the final ballot, and she is actual ERG. So may well have done exactly the same with maybe a little bit more discretion. Oh, and if the majority of Tory MPs do manage to unseat Truss and remarkably get a replacement that isn't a PR disaster, and those are big ifs, then there's the little matter of Reform UK. This is what the Brexit party became. Now, they look harmless now, you think, Phil. They're nowhere now. But they are. They still have a little bit of support. You can see on the polling, they have a bit of support. If the Tories try to move back to the centre ground to take Labour on, the money will start rolling in again. They'll pipe up again. They'll wheel Nigel Farage out again. They'll threaten to field candidates against the Tories at the next election. They won't expect to get as many votes as in 2019, but they could get enough to unseat a few more Tories. They might even be more cunning than that. They might just put candidates up against Tory candidates who are not on the far right. So they might give a clear run to the ERG crew and anyone who aligns with them, and challenge anyone who tries to move the party back to the centre. The purpose of Reform UK is to keep the Tories focused on the right. That's it. That's why it's in hibernation now, because they're quite happy with the way it's going. But the Tories cannot win if they abandon the centre to Labour. So yeah, it's a proper death spiral for the Tories here. They're not actually going to lose 300 seats at the next election. Last night's polling was, as I say, a bit of a perfect storm. But they are going to lose. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.